What's up, everyone, and welcome to Variant the Podcast. It is myself with Tim, as always, but we have, yet again, Tim, another very special guest. We have ComicTom 101 in the house. What is up, Tom?
What's good, man? How are you?
Dude, I'm good, but I'm a little peeved, man. You made me watch a movie that I wasn't planning on watching. You made fun of me the whole time, telling me that I had to go see it for this podcast.
What's going on, Variant the Podcast, unless you're bogged down with a bunch of homework you do not want?
Well,
Unbelievable.
This did start out as one segment, and then it turned into 5. So I'm down for the ride.
Yeah, I mean, you just gotta go with it. It's gonna be fun.
Yeah.
It's gonna be fun.
I couldn't, because we have a new segment we're introducing today that I could not be more excited about. We have been talking to Tom about this. It is a hot segment.
Okay.
And we've been talking to Tom about this for, goodness, Tom, what, 2 years? Legit?
It took
Something
a little
like
bit
that.
of
Anyway.
preparation is what he's trying to say.
Yeah, a little bit. But we are finally rolling out this new segment with Tom today, which you guys will be hearing about in just a minute. We're going to talk about the Marvels. We're going to talk about the Loki finale. We got a whole bunch of stuff. I was like, oh, Tom's got to be in on this. The world needs to know.
Well, he really wanted to see it.
Oh, yeah, that's what I mean. I was helping him, really.
Yeah, it was.
That's
giving
how
him
I
an
really viewed it. I was like,
excuse.
look, I'm helping him break free of his daily grind and go just get some one-on-one time with the Marvels, you know?
I love how we're already setting the tone for how we felt about this movie.
We don't know, you know? We're going to go into this super objective and really excited.
With that said, Tom, people may have recognized you for being on the channel before. You've done several videos on Variant before, but intro yourself. Who are you and what do you do?
I am known as ComicTom on YouTube. I've been on YouTube for just over 5 years. And the thing that I provide the comic community specifically, because that's like the name, ComicTom, right, is going over weekly what's selling in the community, whether it be trending comics or investment comics. Those are like the big things because I am a comic dealer myself. I'm an art dealer. I rep artists. I make variant exclusives. And because I dabble in so many things within industry, you know, I work with a lot of amazing people. And you've actually got a chance to chat with one in person, the Golden Age Guru. That's the Golden Age specialist on the show. You know, I surround myself with people that I've learned from over the years, mentors. And yeah, I've been in the comic game since I was a little kid, you know, dealing comics with my dad, you know, at shows and little shops and the mall, and grew up in an LCS, and I make content about comic books, collecting, and the market.
Well, that's actually a good question. And I don't know that I've ever asked you this, but how exactly did you start doing what you're doing now? Where ComicTom, what was the birth of ComicTom?
Well, my dad was managing a comic book store back when I was like 6 to 8 years old, right around that time. And this storefront had an apartment above and behind it. On the top apartment was the owner of the store, and then the apartment behind it, literally through the kitchen door, you opened up this door and you're in the back of a comic store. That was the apartment that we lived at. So I literally on Saturday morning would wake up, watch Spider-Man, and then go through, well, at the time, my dad had like those beads separating. He's kind of a hippie. And I'd go through the back of that store and just with my Magic the Gathering deck or my D&D papers, or if I wanted to read some comics off the wall, I got to do what I want. And so I was like around it a lot. And what would end up happening is my dad would remarry. We would move to where I live now, which is Washington. All this took place in New York. That's where I'm from. And that store would go out of business, and the owner would like hit my dad up and say, hey, do you want to just buy everything? So my dad flew down, drove two semis with my uncle, an entire storefront all the way to Washington. And you know, his intentions were to like start a comic book store up here in the Pacific Northwest. And what would end up happening is there would be like kind of like a recession. My mom lost her job. So instead of doing a new business like a comic store, which is a very tough thing to do, he's like, Tom, we got to like pay the mortgage. Let's go to comic shows. Let's start selling on eBay. Let's start processing books. So I learned how to like grade, and I learned about comic dealing and bagging and boarding since I was like a really little kid. And that's how we paid the bills for years. And, you know, I would go to Quest Field that would turn into Emerald City Comic Con eventually and set up shop there. And I would meet a lot of people when I was a youth, and over time, I got into doing it myself in my like kind of mid-20s, and I'm like, you know, I really like comic books again. I want to get back into it more on a serious level. And all those people within that network, they're still in the game. So like these people I grew up with, they're still, you know, at shows, and they're not just like friends and colleagues. I consider them family now. I get to work with them on a daily basis.
Oh man, that's awesome. Well, that actually fills some gaps for me because that explains how you're like, because you're an insanely knowledgeable guy. If you're not following ComicTom 101 on YouTube, you've got to do that. The links are in the description of this episode. So definitely go follow him if you're interested in comics on any level, because it's not just Tom. Like he said, he surrounds himself with some really knowledgeable people that touch on all different aspects of the comic industry. So you can learn a ton from these guys, but you particularly are just a really knowledgeable guy for your age. I don't mean that as I don't know. Maybe you're like 87 and you just look really great. I don't know.
He's Benjamin Button. He's the Benjamin Button of comic books.
But that explains why, because you've been doing it since you were a kid.
Yeah, man. I've always had comics around. You know, we had what do they call it? Like a guest house, they call it like a mother's house. I don't know. It's a separate home, like a little tiny place that, you know, the mother-in-law would stay in growing up.
Mother-in-law suite.
Exactly. We had one of those growing up, and that's where the collection lived. You know, we had hundreds of long boxes and magic cards all just like in the rooms there. But it also was like a small apartment. So whenever I had friends over from, you know, middle school and high school, you know, I'd use the living room. We have like slumber parties and things like that. But I was known as the guy who always had like this comic store in this place that would host parties at. And it's like, don't touch the comics, don't touch the magic, but like, hey, let's play some Xbox.
Did you have a Black Lotus? Did you ever have a Black Lotus?
Oh, I don't think we ever had a Black Lotus, but yeah, we had some crazy stuff. And I'm not as like well-versed in the collectible side of magic, but my dad has said numerous times that for what he paid for the entire store, he was able to like make back in just like one box of insanely rare magic cards. And we had thousands of them. Yeah.
Good for him.
That's wild. So what made you go from, you know, getting back into the game and all that kind of stuff? What was the birth of the mystery mail call? Because I know that was like, when you first really got cranking, that was like your big thing. I mean, you're doing a lot now, but.
Yeah, we currently have I believe it's still the largest monthly comic book subscription service in the world. And it is now international. I pack a box with 4 to 5 random comics every month. We make a lot of exclusives and work with some amazing artists, and just hook up the community with a great deal. You know, that's the goal, is to get them something that is worth more than what they're paying for. And when I started YouTube and kind of going all in on comics, I knew that I could get the community some awesome books. So the idea was like, how do I just make it kind of easy for them to support what we do? And yeah, that was just kind of the birth of it. We started it with like 25 people back in the day. And yeah, we have a lot more now, and we have a lot of those same people that are still here. You know,
that's amazing.
It's a amazing thing.
And I can say, because I'm actually a longtime subscriber to the mystery mail call. Well, I have legit been a subscriber, so I put my money where my mouth is what I'm saying.
And you wouldn't have had that if Tom not, because you left out briefly that you came from the banking background.
That's true.
You managed a bank, right?
Yeah, I was the youngest Wells Fargo branch manager at the time. I don't even know what they were thinking. Like, I was 21 years old. I shouldn't have been doing it. But I looked good in a suit. And, you know, I did the classic, like, you know, rising through the ranks once I was 18 and could work at a bank. And I got my first branch at 21, and it went really well. I was good at it, you know, managing people that were like triple my age. But what ended up happening is I became the guy that when there was a new location being built, that's where they would put me, right? And I ended up working for Wells Fargo, Union Bank. And I did that for like 7 years. And I realized I just really didn't like that grind. And the passion I had always throughout that time was comic books. I did it as like just like a hobby, you know? I like the you know, let the hobby fund itself mentality. So it was working. And I thought, you know, it would make me so much happier if I could just do this all the time. And that was really what, you know, started the YouTube channel, was my effort of like seeing if I can provide as much value as I would need to the comic book community, so that I could like do this full time as my main job. And, you know, it's going okay. It's going okay.
Yeah,
I'm 5 years in.
It's doing all right. And on top of the mystery mail call, like you mentioned, you're doing a lot of exclusives now. Like, you are doing a lot of exclusives. You're dropping some incredible exclusives and stuff now. Like, you would like do one a month for a while, but now it's like a barrage of dope exclusives and stuff. I feel like every time I turn around, you're like, mystery drop, surprise drop, and it's like something insane. And I'm like, come on, you could at least let a brother know.
I think you had like something like 15 at New York Comic Con alone. Or was it 15 or 20? It was something stupid just at New York.
Yeah, it was a lot. It was a lot, you know. But when you work with so many dope artists, you can't really say no. I mean, I've had the privilege of working with like Peach Momoko, who's one of the, I would say, biggest artists right now at Marvel Comics. It's exclusive to Marvel. We work with Ralph Grassetti, who is the former God of War art director, now art director at Netflix. He's like moved up ranks, which almost didn't seem possible for how big of a creator as he is. And yeah, you know, when I'm working with these people, it's like projects start to happen. And, you know, as long as the community likes what we do, you know, I'm going to keep on making that happen. Because my goal is to make the coolest stuff that otherwise wouldn't be created and try to just sell it for like the most affordable amount, you know, trying to hook the fam up is what I say.
And if for any of you that have watched our first Whatnot live stream, Tom actually did
he pulled a rabbit out of a hat? No, you pulled a rabbit out of the hat.
So that's actually a really funny story that we'll tell another day.
I was like, why? It's like you have a scab, and then he's like, let's pick it open. They forgot, okay?
It wasn't that bad, but there was some funny behind the scenes. That's for sure. It was
pretty bad. So we had a bunch of technical difficulties, short version of it. We had a bunch of technical difficulties getting it up and running. It was our first Whatnot live stream. And Tom was waiting on us because he's going to raid the show and dump his audience because he was doing his own live and he's got a massive following on Whatnot. If you guys, a lot of the exclusives and stuff he drops on that. So if you guys aren't following him over there, do that. But he was waiting to raid our new show. So we're like, hey man, how long can you stall? And he's like, okay, just 1 second. What was it, 45 minutes?
Yeah, but see, we don't bring that up. See,
no, this is stuff you do bring up.
It shouldn't have gone 45 minutes.
Listen, this is all family
it didn't
here.
Feel like 45
we're
minutes.
all family.
I love how Tom's like, it didn't feel like, but meanwhile, if we're going to get into it, he's like blowing me up. It's like, bro, what's going on? Freaking go live.
You're
killing me,
Smalls. Waiting for you guys. It was a good time, though. You guys killed it.
Oh, goodness. But
with that said, tons of exclusives, an awesome subscription box, and most recently, you have joined the pool of actual creators creating your own book, which is about to drop in the beginning of 2024. You'll have the exact dates. Crashdown, a book that you co-wrote and co-created with Fire Guy Ryan and Templesmith himself from 30 Days of Night.
I appreciate that. Yes, I have the pleasure of teaming up with one of my all-time favorite artists, Ben Templesmith, and one of my best friends, Ryan Sargent, also known as Fire Guy Ryan, on the show. It's a co-written book. It's called Crashdown. It comes out January 24th, and it's going to be distributed across the country and out of country at LCSs near you. And it's a story that really like leans on some of my favorite IPs as far as like the inspiration goes. It's got a hint of Alien. It's got a hint of Lost. And it's about the like final days of human civilization and our attempts to bring a whole bunch of people to a new planet and what happens when they arrive. And we're going to cover like only the first couple days of that experience. So it's going to be a wild ride. There's a lot of tentacles. Awesome. There's a lot of violence. And we have a horror legend, living legend on the title. So I'm very excited for you guys to read it because all last year I was just geeking out about Astonishing Times, you know? So you set the bar pretty high for YouTubers making comic book content.
Dude, but like you also, so the story sounds great and I can't wait till you send me an early copy to read. But also lots of variant covers. I know since, you know, you're coming from the variant cover world and now you're doing your own comic book, you're going to have all the variant covers.
Well, it's in previews now. So these covers are released and you can also like see them in my Instagram at ComicTom 101. But yeah, it is like, I'm in like fairy tale land with this. I do not know how this happened, but I have a David Mack cover. I have more than one. Johnny Desjardins.
Amazing.
You know, we've worked with like Casey Parsons and Alex Maleev. I mean, Ben Templesmith, of course, has covers, but we've worked with Javon Jordan. There's a huge slate. Yeah, just a bunch of talented people. We're able to release a bunch of covers. We're making a lot of like store exclusives, like super low print stuff, you know, trying to make these like cool collectibles. And through that, you know, we've just been going ham on commissioning covers so that we can, you know, just make some really cool stuff. You know, now that I'm behind the driver's seat with this, most of the time I have to work with publishers, you know, like what they'll allow me to do, what the artists will allow me to do. I'm over here going, this is what I want. This is what I want to see. So, just amazing talent. Like the talent's, I'm glad Ben T's on the book because the talent is like a bit It's probably my first comic book. So
Yeah.
I'm feeling very humbled, to say the least.
No, for sure. Especially to have a horror icon like that. I mean, 30 Days of Night, that's an iconic horror movie.
Oh, yeah.
Comic book made horror movie. So that's all kinds of fun.
That's amazing, man. Congratulations, first and foremost. Like, that's a huge, huge deal for any content creator of any kind for you to be able to step out into the full blown, you are now a comic book writer world. And that's just awesome, dude.
Dude, it's crazy. I will tell you, having a published book myself on Dark Horse and Comixology Originals.
Self-plug.
Self-plug. Get it now. Order the trade. It'll always be crazy seeing your book at a local comic book shop. It's just weird to be like, hey, I remember coming up with this idea or this name and then seeing it at a store where people can buy it.
Yeah,
it's just
amazing.
really, really weird and awesome at the same time. And I don't think, at least me, I'll never get used to it.
And for you guys in the audience, like Tom and I are already talking about doing a little sneak peek of the book when it drops for the variant audience. So that is going to be coming because this is going to be an awesome title and you guys need to be seeing it. So watch out for that. Probably January?
Yeah, January 24th is when it comes out, but you can order it right now.
Yeah. So we'll figure out
on Whatnot Publishing.
Yeah, we'll figure out like when we can do a sneak peek and all that stuff, but it'll be around the release of the book. So that'll be coming. But that leads us to
something I don't know about.
Something I'm very excited about that Arris is totally in the blind about, which also makes me even more excited.
And look, both of you smiling with the evil Joker grin.
So this is going to be the introduction. Today is going to be the very first of a new monthly segment. We're going to launch these in the first week, roughly, of every month, where Tom is going to come on and he is going to bring the heat with the top 5 hottest books for that month.
The fire.
Comic titles, whatever, graphic novels, whatever Tom feels like. Tom is going to be just bringing the heat. And then, some surprises sprinkled in there.
Like, I don't know what these 5 are.
That's right. Arris is going into this totally blind. And going forward, I'll probably be blind on some of it too. As much as possible, we'll try and keep both of us blind and let him just surprise us so it can be like an organic conversation. But Arris is the blind dog today.
I am the blind one today. Let's see what this
and this
fire
list is dope. So, ComicTom, the hot 5. Let's get to it.
Let's get into it. I cover, we do upwards of, actually, for sure, 8 different videos covering the marketplace. So what I did is I went through all these different lists. Each one of those videos are a list of 10 different books that we talk about. So I went through and picked out the ones that I talked about the most. And some of them are kind of similar, and I kind of just rounded it out to have one comic kind of define it, and I limited it to just 5. So the first one I want to talk about, this would be number 5 on the list, is Universal Monsters Dracula #1. James Tynion IV, Brilliance. This is a book that everyone needs to check out. It is a masterpiece. He has Martin Simmons from Department of Truth on the comic, and the art is it's unlike anything I've seen that this artist has done. There are pages in this comic that is just beautiful. Just blood everywhere. It's like a very tastefully done look at a story that we all know. This is an adaptation, and the first adaptation James has done in quite a long time. He's been focused on independent characters for years, whether it's Something Is Killing the Children or Wind, Department of Truth, for example. And he's over here now writing a story that's been told before, but in a unique way. And Martin Simmons, there are pages with flies on the cover because, you got, Renfield, etc. And I was checking out auctions because some of these pages actually went for sale. And someone commented, wow, those flies look real. And the answer was they were real. He actually glued dead flies to the page.
That's amazing.
Dude, that's crazy.
That's amazing. It's the start of a Universal Monsters comic verse, right? Because I think they just announced Creature from the Black Lagoon is going to be one of the next ones coming up.
Well, but fortunately, I came prepared, Arris. We have Universal Monsters Frankenstein, The Mummy, and Wolfman confirmed on the slate as well.
Okay, there we go.
And I know you like these titles, Arris. You've mentioned to me multiple times that Universal Monsters is your jam.
Dude, it's
we love the Universal Monsters over here.
So much. See,
classic.
Because the fact that this failed in the theaters, as when they were trying to reboot this, the Dark Verse, I guess is what they were calling it, Universal. Well, Tom Cruise is the Mummy, but it didn't do too well. So they're like, abort. It's so cool that we're now getting it in comic book form because I feel like you could do a lot more. Obviously, with comic books as a medium where it's like budget doesn't matter, your imagination is the limit. So to see someone like James Tynion take on Dracula is insane. And do we have confirmation on creative teams for like Frankenstein and stuff?
I do not have that info yet. I don't think it's been revealed. Dracula just dropped recently, like in the last couple
It did. Issue 1 just came out like 2 weeks ago.
I know you guys like to give some like recommended reads, and I'm sure as Batman fans, you can attest that James Tynion IV is one of the best writers of our generation. He actually has a horror Christmas comic book. It's going to be 9 issues long. That's coming out this very week, The Deviant #1. So if you're looking for any cool new stuff to kind of get into the holiday spirit, I recommend that. Number 4 on the list is more Skybound. Transformers #1 is gotta go at number 4. The Energon universe has come out with a bang. It's probably the most exciting thing happening in ongoing comics right now. And I think that the fandom made it clear that this is what they are most hyped about.
Yeah, no, it's definitely one of the bright spots in comics.
And
right
people
now,
are loving it. You know, we may get like maybe a Starscream solo title, or we may get like, you know, a Hawk solo title, or just other characters within that world may get solo titles in 2024 and beyond.
That's a great number 4.
Well, it's going to lead us to number 3. It kind of foreshadowed it. I got to put G.I. Joe 1 on this list, and I'm putting it above Transformers. You know, maybe it's because Transformers has debuted and the ramp up this month has been more of a focus on Duke and Cobra Commander, but I'm more excited about reading G.I. Joe than I am about really anything that they're releasing right now. Joshua Williamson described it as almost like a horror narrative.
Yeah, I'm right there with you, because I'm a casual Transformers G.I. Joe fan, but I wasn't super close to it.
Right.
A lot of people, it's their diehard. You know, for me, it was more of the, Batman, Spider-Man. The way they're pitching this, and it's a fresh start for people who weren't so diehard with it. It's a nice entry point, and it seems like it's going to be very different. And also, since they're rebooting this universe, Cobra doesn't exist yet, and the G.I. Joe don't exist yet. We're going to see how they formed in these series,
which is a very unique take.
Yes, and
Extremely.
So Kirkman and Josh and the whole creative team get to spearhead that from scratch, and I'm very excited to see how it turns out. Yeah,
it's crazy that Hasbro has been so chill with the decisions that they're making over there, because like to say that they killed Bumblebee off in the comics, I mean, that's a pretty big ask, you would imagine. And that's something that Robert Kirkman pointed out in this interview that you conducted, Arris, is that he's so stoked that the creative freedom is being preserved. And it's probably because he's Robert Kirkman, but
Yeah, that was one of the first questions I asked when we were talking about Transformers. Was like, Hasbro let you kill one of their most popular characters. I mean, he got a solo movie. Yeah. The Bumblebee solo movie is what soft booted this Transformers universe. And they were like, yeah, you kill him. And he's like, all right.
And he was just heartless, like just bloodthirsty about it too. He's just like, he's dead and he's not coming back. Yeah. It was like Megatron up there. I tore his head off.
So what do we got next?
That brings us to number 2 on this list. And we're going to probably get into this a little bit today because of like the media updates, but I got to put Frank Miller, Wolverine #1, right here on the list. This is our first solo Wolverine story. This issue is one of the more affordable Wolverine key comics that has been uplifted ever since the announcement that Hugh Jackman wasn't just going to be in Deadpool 3, but he was reprising his role and he was going to wear that classic yellow costume.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, I mean, it's like you said, that's that's always going to be a key issue. It's one of those covers that people are always going to want. Just again, because of the cover alone, not even so much. I mean, the story, obviously, but just the image is like burned into every Marvel Wolverine fan, kind of like giant size X-Men, or like, on DC side, the Dark Knight Returns. So yeah, I definitely see this in a lot of other Wolverine books spiking as Deadpool 3 approaches, because we'll talk about it later as we get into the MCU. But Deadpool 3, I feel like I'm saying it every single podcast now or anytime I talk about this, that Deadpool 3 is probably going to be the saving grace next year for the MCU. And the fact that Hugh Jackman is in it and that it could potentially be setting up for a larger role he may have in Secret Wars, which is the rumors floating around. Yeah, again, rumors. Yeah, all these type of books are just gonna spike.
A lot of interest in Deadpool as well. I could have put New Mutants 98 on here, first appearance of Deadpool. It's a bit more of a pricey book and one that has dropped a lot in price in the last couple years. And Wolverine is something that we've talked about like every single week. I mean, the hype is real with Hugh Jackman reprising the role. So I'm excited to see what happens, especially considering that this is probably the only Marvel movie on slate for 2024 at this point.
That's right. Yep. Oh, MCU.
We'll save that till the end. So Wolverine #1, and if you're feeling a little bit Sprite, New Mutants number 98.
Yeah.
Which brings us to the #1 most trending book in the world. And I'm not just talking about this first appearance. I'm talking about their solo series. I'm talking about their second appearance. It's all about X-Men 130. We're chatting Dazzler's first appearance. We're talking about Taylor Swift taking over the comic game. My partner was joking that on my YouTube channel and Instagram, there's a ton of Taylor Swift stuff. She actually thought that I'm like, hey, I got nothing against Taylor Swift. I don't listen to a whole lot of, actually, I don't listen to any Taylor Swift. But
you ain't a Swiftie?
She's over here thinking that I'm like really into Taylor. And I'm like, no, it's like Deadpool 3 and Ryan Reynolds and like, what's happening? It's X-Men spec.
Yeah, man.
No, that one's crazy. I mean, we were kind of talking about it earlier, how her film has been in theater, her concert that's in theaters right now. I think it's been in theaters almost a month, because I think it premiered the weekend of New York Comic Con is when it hit theaters. And it still made $90 million this past weekend.
It debuted with a $92 million opening or something.
It debuted at
It was
$90 million.
debuted. It was opening weekend was like $92 million.
Okay, so
something in that ballpark.
But it's still making bank.
Now, to date, in like 3 or 4 weeks, it's made almost $200 million at the box office, and it's just her Arris tour,
which is
on the big screen.
Crazy.
Which is already, just the tour itself has already made billions of dollars.
I've said it though, if she in fact is Dazzler in Deadpool 3, even for a small cameo, we've seen it happen with the NFL, because she's dating.
Every time he wants to bring this up, and it just makes my heart hurt.
We've seen it happen with the NFL. Who's she dating again from the Chiefs?
Freaking Travis Kelce.
Travis Kelce.
Freaking Travis Kelce. He did this.
She's dating Travis Kelce from the Kansas City Chiefs, and attendance has skyrocketed for every home game. All of the jerseys for him are like sold out, and it's because of her. So again, the Swifties,
well, they're not sold out.
They were for like the first month. Yes, they were.
No, when you said that the first time, I went and looked, you could get one.
Bro, I'm telling you. You getting that off-brand
He's
stuff.
not even an NFL fan.
You're getting that off-brand
about anything.
You gotta go. You gotta be enough to know something sold out.
No, NFLshop.com.
Yeah,
I could have bought a Travis Kelce jersey.
Sold out. Maybe they restocked by the time. You were late on the news. You were late on the news.
Disagree.
He was late.
All this sports ball talk is going way over my head, man. I don't know.
You don't listen to Taylor Swift?
I've heard Taylor Swift before.
Well, of course.
That's my ball. That's what I'm like. Yes, I'm familiar with Taylor Swift. Meanwhile, Arris is in his car on the way home going, shake, shake it off.
Hell yeah.
Shake it off. Shake it off.
Damn right.
Yeah, I'm not doing that. No, not so much.
Well,
your loss.
But hey, it may give a positive spin to X-Men.
Well, maybe I'm going to be after this movie. I don't know. But I mean, when it really comes down to it, the biggest things in comics right now, it's got to be that rundown we just gave. We got James Tynion IV killing it on the Universal Monsters. What Skybound's cooking up over on in the Energon universe that they've created, Transformers and G.I. Joe. And the only thing in the near future is Deadpool 3. And that's got to be Wolverine, Deadpool, and of course, Taylor Swift, Dazzler.
You know the funny thing is, Dazzler, I'm gonna say it, I don't even care. Dazzler's not that cool of a character. Like I'm just throwing that out there. I know we got lots of Dazzler fans out there, but let's be honest, no one was really talking about Dazzler until T Swift was rumored to play Dazzler. Okay.
Here's Tom's balloon. Here's Arris with a needle.
No. You're 100% correct. You're 100% correct saying it's gonna spike. But what I'm saying is the only reason why it will and people care is because Taylor Swift is attached to it.
Well, let's not forget, Dazzler was in the last X-Men movie, the Dark Phoenix movie, very quickly, and no one really cared. It was cool, She had some 10 seconds of screen time, but it wasn't Taylor Swift though.
And did you do Spirit Fingers in her 10 seconds? No? All right.
I don't know, man. It may be like the worst movie since Captain Marvel and all that, but I don't know.
Oh, that's a segue.
There's a little foreshadow for you.
That's a segue, huh?
That was a killer kickoff list for the Hot 5. Thank you so much for that. So these are going to be books that for you guys that like to collect, even if you're just kind of dabbling in comics, you want places to dive in on characters. These books are going to be great books to pick up on a monthly basis. This is just us bringing some extra value to you guys in the variant audience with my man ComicTom over here. He's the one that knows. So he's going to be bringing us 5. And like I said, some surprises, a little sprinkle in some extra in there.
I really thought you were going to say
what's
fire.
The guy? What's the chef that did the sprinkling?
Salt Bay.
Salt Bay?
Salt Bay.
Is that a real name?
I think that's his name. Yeah, Salt Bay.
Yeah.
I thought you were going to go like Sandman or something like that, but Salt Bay.
Comic Salt Bay.
Bringing that fire.
Comic Salt Bay.
Your fire starter.
Thank you for that.
But that brings us, now that we wrap up the Hot Five, that brings us to the next phase of today's show, and that is all of the goings on this past week in the MCU, starting with the Loki finale and also the dropping of the Marvels, but also, because they have just hit us with a whole bunch of new information as far as changes of their schedule and so on and so on. But let's lean into Loki, the season finale.
We got to keep it low key.
We're back with that one.
But
I'm sorry to everyone. No.
It's too easy.
Tom, we're going to make you the honorary kickoff to each portion of this as our guest. It's only right. The guest gets first say. So what did you think of the season finale of Loki?
Well, considering that I had to watch the entire series in a couple days to make this podcast happen. No, I'm just kidding. I loved it. I think this was a great show. I thought Loki season 1 was one of the best Disney Plus shows that they've released. Sure. And I think they wrapped it up quite well. Tom Hiddleston just nailed it in, what did he say? Like 14 years of his life has all come together for this point. So I feel like his character arc really was completed. It felt good. And it was a fun show to watch. I love all the Groundhog Day stuff. I love the time travel stuff.
Yeah.
The visual effects were excellent. Was it Obi? Absolutely nailed it.
Ouroboros.
So cool to see him on the screen. Every character was great. And I even liked Victor Timely. The Kang stuff I was actually thinking was going to be the lamest portion of this. I feel like it's kind of been a little bit of a letdown as of late, but I thought that Jonathan really killed it.
Yes, I would agree. I would say this is probably one of the best things Marvel Studios has ever done as a whole. Because
I think that's fair.
From season 1 to season 2, because when there's the director and showrunners were talking a lot about it, obviously, after the finale, and they were saying it's very finite in the sense that if they were to come back, Loki season 2, the finale, is a bookend of that chapter. Yeah. So it wouldn't touch on anything from the first 2 seasons in the sense where it's like a continuation in that, where it makes sense where season 2 literally picks up, right? Where season 1 ended. But that finale, for me, spoilers, obviously. Spoilers incoming for the Marvels and Loki, all this. Everything we talk about from here on is going to be spoilers.
If you haven't seen anything that's going on, this is open talk.
Yeah. So it's that ending though, right? Like the ending where because his arc just came full circle. Tom Hiddleston said on the Tonight Show that he's been playing Loki since he was 29 years old.
That's right.
29 years old. He's he's mid-40s, broaching 50, which is crazy.
Wild.
Crazy. So the fact that they nailed what'd you say, a 14-year arc, and they nailed it. That is so rare for not just like superheroes, anything, any film.
He's not broaching 50 though. He's like 43.
That's why I said mid-40s to like... Yeah. So, but point is, the fact that they nailed that ending, like a 14-year, whatever, 15-year arc, it's crazy. Wild, So, and the way they did it where it could be very like definitive, like where that's the end, or you could technically keep going if you want to. I personally just leave it alone. Leave it alone. Mm-hmm. You're not going to match that. Go do what Jordan should have done. Go out on a high.
Yeah.
Don't come back. Let everyone remember you as the GOAT.
Mm-hmm.
Do not taint it. Just leave it alone because it was so good. What did you think?
Well, what say you on that, Tom? Would you like to see them bring Loki back and continue his story, or leave it, let that be the bookend?
I think it's fine either way. I'm low-key starting to feel, no pun, that the thing I want most is this connected universe to stop. I think I'm done. I don't like that all these things are connecting. I think it's like providing some poor storytelling. They're spending so much time trying to layer this connective tissue to everything. Mm-hmm. And I think what I liked about Loki, and I don't know if you recall, they mentioned when they did season 1, that season 2 was like written at the same time. Like they knew this entire thing and they probably could have released this a year ago. And I think because they went into it with a beginning and an end to what was 2 seasons, but it could have been 1 season, was probably why we liked it so much. They weren't, having to connect it to 100 different things and delude the plot. And I think because it was preserved, it's probably why we all like it so much.
Yeah.
But in a weird way, it's a very self-contained, obviously, but it's like, I think the beauty of it is the way it ended, where it also branched out, branched out, get it? Branches, timeline, branched out to where like he basically corrected or is fixing and holding together the multiverse. So it's like, it's not connected. You're right. It's not, but like it is, but brilliantly, so subtly that it's like, it's connected in the sense that he's the one powering and holding together the multiverse for the MCU. And that's so freaking awesome.
It really is. And I think you guys are both on, I agree with you in the sense that the thing that I thought was so great about this series, both season 1 and 2 combined, is that it felt like a complete story that was self-contained, but also had remnants of something bigger. Yeah. So there was elements that told you, okay, this is part of a bigger story, but it was also incredibly self-contained. So you could just watch this by itself from beginning to end and feel totally satisfied and never need to see anything else. Even the Kang stuff. And I understand that there was they tweaked some things at the end. There was an original script, let's say for episode 5 of season 2 that the actual brass at Marvel completely scrapped and made them go back to the drawing board. And this is while some of this flux was going on behind the scenes. And I feel like they did leave it the way they did at the end, particularly regarding Kang, so that they could go in a direction like, the Variety article, let's say, that was leading up to this. One of the things that it hinted to was that this last episode of Loki season 2 was really going to screw Marvel because it was so definitive about Kang. Well, that turned out not to be true at all. Yeah. Not at all. In fact, I would argue that it actually does the opposite. It actually gives them a gateway to move away from Kang if they want to. Yeah. So that portion of at least that article turned out to be false.
I'm wondering where that came from because, like, at the end, you see Renslayer clearly see. Well, actually, I believe they confirmed it after the fact. The Renslayer sees the Kang variant from Quantumania reappear. Like, it's that specific variant of Kang from Quantumania that was supposed to have died. That's the one that appears to her. At least that's what I remember.
Is that what they were saying that she was seeing off screen? Because I thought it was just that beast, that cloud.
No, that purple. That's why it's purple, because it's Kang. That she's seen Kang, specifically the Kang from Quantumania, reappear before her. So it alludes that Kang, the variants are all still out there. But again, it's like...
It's vague enough, though, to where if they wanted to ignore that,
that's what I'm saying. Yeah. You could, or you can't, kind of like with Loki. That could be his end, or you can go on. Because they full on made him... a lot of people... Well, we'll get into this, I suppose. The comic side of things, a lot of people are kind of arguing of who he is. I'm kind of in that world too. It's like, I don't know. Because a lot of people originally got his stories as of episode 5. I was like, oh, they got his stories because he's controlling time, the time slipping. He's controlling the narrative. It makes sense. But then at the end of the finale, with episode 6, it's like, yeah, that still kind of makes sense. But it also kind of like works with like Atlas, who's the custodian of the universe, who basically just literally, like Loki in the comic books, is sitting on a throne and he's in charge of keeping the multiverse in order. And that's literally what Loki's doing. He is now the battery that is holding all the threads of the multiverse together, powering it and making sure it stays put, right? So that also fits the custodian of the multiverse. So it's like, who is he? I don't know. Like, it's just, it doesn't really matter because the MCU kind of shifts things anyway. You could argue that till you're blue in the face. All we know is he's the battery for the MCU going forward, whether we see him again. And that's kind of cool because Loki's arc from the beginning, right? He's burdened with glorious purpose, right? From the very beginning in the first Avengers film. That's been his whole arc. They revisited in season 1. And then, he's a villain. He slowly becomes an anti-hero. And then the series kind of makes him a full hero where he realizes, he's a villain, but he finds his redemption and that he really is burdened with glorious purpose. His purpose was to literally save the multiverse. Like, that's like, should the Avengers save like the Earth? He's literally holding together the multiverse in every single timeline. He is like, became the biggest hero, arguably, in the MCU. And that arc where you have this guy who, he was adopted. He wanted to be his brother. He wasn't as good as his brother. So, he becomes angry and he goes after his heroes and all this stuff. He wants to be a ruler. And then just all the way to like, he realizes, oh, like I was approaching this wrong. Like, this is what my purpose was. This is what my glorious purpose was. It was just so well written and so well done.
It really was. And I think that was my favorite part about this show, period. Yeah. Not just the finale. You mentioned the glorious purpose aspect. That's how Loki came into the MCU, right? Was, I'm burdened with glorious purpose. It was the title of the very first episode of the Loki series. and they titled the final episode Glorious Purpose
So
as well.
good.
And they wrapped it up with them going through this whole arc about, for Loki. They completed his story really, really well, I think, of that kind of what you were just talking about, of him taking him through this cycle of abusing him and him having to go through all of these things and making it really hard on him, because the writers of the show and the showrunners, they actually did an interview with Deadline.
Yeah.
And they talked about, in that interview, they talked about how, like, we decided really early on that to wrap up Loki's arc, which, by the way, Tom Hiddleston in that Tonight Show interview says this is the conclusion. He said this is the end of Loki's story.
Although
whether that turns out to be true or not.
He also said he'd come back if he got a call, though.
Yeah, whether that turns out to be true or not, we'll wait and see. But they said they decided early on that to wrap up Loki's story, they wanted him to go from little G God to big G God. Right? They wanted to turn him into something much bigger than himself. And for him to realize that, well, to do that, to earn that, they really had to make it hard on Loki. They had to crush him, basically, so that he, when he learned these things and came through it on the other side and realized, oh, the burden of glorious purpose is doing something bigger than myself, is doing things for something other than myself. And to see that, because it addressed like a bunch of like philosophical human questions and, sacrificing yourself for people that you care about. There was a lot of like big topics in this show.
Like they question, it's like, are you doing this for you? Or are you doing this because you want your friends?
Even his back and forth conversation with Mobius, where he's asking that question, how do you decide who lives and who dies when you have that power? Like, how do you make that decision? Like, those are big questions. It's actually something that they kind of like approached very gently and then quickly moved away from it in the Marvels movie, which came out the same week. But, Loki really dove into that and really asked the question, and you saw the strain on Loki until he finally reached that point where he made the decision, okay, I know what I need to do.
Yeah.
I know the kind of God that I need to be for all of us, for you, right?
So good.
And then he takes this final journey where he destroys the loom, right? That's basically, we learned in the last couple of episodes it's a failsafe meant to destroy every branch, except for what do they call it? The sacred timeline. And then everything dies, including the TVA, and they just start all over again. Well, he says no, and he wipes out the loom entirely after spending centuries time slipping, trying to figure out physics. He goes through all this. And again, they really put him through the ringer. And then in the end, he takes all the branches, gives them life, and then he creates the Yggdrasil, the world tree, with these branches of timeline, and it comes to life. And there was so much symbolism to it that I was actually shocked by it.
No, it was beautiful.
It was really well written, really well acted. It brought it to such a really strong conclusion as far as, for the arc of such a strong character. That's what you want. It's like the death of Iron Man, right? It's like you want a character like that you've loved for so long and they did such a great job with. You want to see that come to like a really strong conclusion.
Some would say this is where the adults were working for Marvel Studios. Considering how I don't know if I have a single complaint about this, especially this season, because I think the second season, because I'm thinking there was like that one episode, season 1, that I was like, all right, that wasn't bad, but it was a little slow. I didn't have a single, I know for me personally, season 2 was flawless. I loved it. There
was like one episode that I would say felt fillerish.
See, I think, is it the Victor Timely one or no?
It was, I think episode 4 was the one I was like, okay. Even 5 had moments where I was like, it felt a little fillerish, but it had its purpose. But the reason I think it felt like that is because they had written a totally different episode for episode 5.
Possible.
And they had to scrap it. And they wrote something else. So,
but either way, like you know what? I think I'm gonna say it, guys. I would say that this ending, as far as ending a character's arc, is up there with Tony Stark's. I'm gonna say it, and I think
that's fair.
I'm not gonna say it's better. I'm not gonna say it's better. So no one twists my words. I will say it's in the same ballpark, and the argument could be made that it's just as good.
It's just the bar is so low, though. You know, like I mean, Thanos, I think also could, you know, but that's like Tony Stark too. Like they're tied together. But you think of Hulk. Who's happy with what they did with Hulk? I don't think anyone's happy with what they did with Hulk. I mean, who's happy with what they did with, Thor? I mean, that's another good example.
Don't even. Yeah.
And then also, you know, you think of Captain America, they're still trying to figure it out. You know, Sam Wilson, Cap, I've actually really liking what's happening, but we're finding out this week that they're scrapping and doing reshoots because it was such poor test screening. So even the studios are like not very optimistic about this character arc.
Yeah,
and
Marvel
they're on
is very nervous right now. It's they've turned into DC where they're like, we gotta watch our step.
We don't know.
They're just gonna be fighting over James Gunn. They're just gonna be passing him back and forth.
For me, if you were to ask me at this point in time, if you were to ask me, name the best like character arcs in the MCU, automatically it would be Iron Man, Cap, Loki. Easy. I think though that's like the Trinity currently.
But I get what Tom is saying because you don't have much to compare to. Right? Yeah. Like there's just, you have one or two that wrapped up well and everything else is like, could have been better there.
I thought, did you not like Black Widow, Scarlett Johansson's end? Her sacrifice?
In Infinity War?
Yeah.
No, I thought that was good.
Yeah, it was really good.
To be fair though, she also wasn't given nearly enough attention until after that.
Yeah, literally her solo movie didn't come out till after the fact.
So it's like even that you're kind of like, yes, her end was good, but we really didn't get a strong Black Widow arc until after the fact, right? True. So it's like yes, but no.
Hawkeye's is I don't know if he's definitive, but Hawkeye has also had you know what? The MCU has had some really good arcs for characters. Because Hawkeye in his solo season,
they've had some good ones.
Then obviously Iron Man, Cap,
Spider-Man.
Loki, but he's still going. He's still going.
That's what I'm saying. Most of them are ongoing.
Yeah. I guess if
you're talking about like a definitive end where you could say, okay, this might be the end for this character, at least for now until they reboot it.
Yeah. It's Iron Man, Cap, Black Widow, Loki, and potentially Hawkeye. I don't know if they're going to bring him back.
I would, because even Captain America's, it just doesn't, even though they're trying to make it sound like it just doesn't feel like they're bookending that thing. So I'm just gonna say
he got his dance. He got his freaking dance.
I have other issues with that, but let's stick to Loki, I suppose. So Loki, Iron Man, and Thanos. I think for sure you can look at it and go, these are strong conclusions.
Thanos is a good. That's a good point, Tom. Yeah. I forgot about Thanos, and that is Thanos is arguably the best villain in comic book just comic book movies. You could make that argument easy.
Other than the Joker.
Yeah, I would say that you could make the argument
or including the Joker.
I say like he's in that part.
Oh yeah. Either way, Loki, it capped off with a really, really strong conclusion for Loki, whether they decide to whichever direction, because they left him in a very powerful position. He's arguably the most powerful character in the MCU at this point. The question is, what do they do with that? Does that conclude and he just is there overseeing? But I mean, as far as like what he is, and as far as his title, according to this Deadline article, they were referring to him as the God of Stories. So, and that's the thing is that
Marvel's calling him God Loki. Marvel, like actually on their Funko Pop, like it's God Loki.
Yeah, I think it's a hybrid. It's not any one thing. They kind of just did their own thing. So it's a very hybrid. So if you wanted to call him God of Stories, I think you're well within the range of, whichever way, he's definitely in a very powerful position. So whether they decide to leverage that in any way, or if that's just the culmination, and then we springboard from there into anything else.
I think what we could all agree on is the fact that they had one job and they totally nailed it. But the next thing we're going to talk about is up in the air if we think they totally nailed it.
Yeah. Just when we thought you couldn't be any worse,
so Tom,
you do something like this.
So Tom, as our guest of honor for this podcast of today, how do you feel about the Marvels?
How was the Marvels in your empty theater?
Did you like them? Did they totally nail the Marvels?
Well, the bar is just so low right now. But no, I enjoyed the movie. But I kind of enjoyed Quantumania too. Like they're fun movies to watch.
Right.
But they're not hitting this excitement level that I've had in years past where I was like really hyped to be there on opening day. And I just couldn't wait to find out how they're going to resolve, with Avengers Endgame, like those movies were so big because they really worked on having the epic unfold over the course of there's a lot of effort in multiple movies with a foe like Thanos that we all just chatted about in length about how much we loved how they handled it. And really thinking about Loki, how they handled his character arc, I think a lot of those things are what was kind of absent in maybe Captain Marvel's a little bit. Up until this point, I think they actually provided a lot more depth with Brie Larson, Captain Marvel. I definitely enjoyed the almost like buddy cop aspect of the three of them on screen. The cat was great, and I had no excitement really going into it. But I've also felt similar to like a handful of Marvel movies in years past. So wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be.
Well, let me ask you this. So you like you said, you've gone into several Marvel films, not super excited. Where were you before going in to see this movie? Where were you like in the MCU in general? Had you kind of already given up the ghost and you're just like, all right, they moved in a direction they've left me not super interested? Or were you kind of still on board a little bit, or you weren't like as mega MCU fan as most to begin with? Like, where were you going in?
You said it well on the last podcast. Apathy is a real thing. After Thor Love and Thunder, after Black Widow for me, after multiple Disney Plus shows. And I know Star Wars isn't Marvel, but it's all Disney. And I feel the same way with that whole IP as well, that I was ready to just watch and wait for this to hit, streaming to watch this movie. And I went to the theater on Friday opening night, and I made a story post, just kind of joking, calling you guys out for making me go to see this movie when I wasn't planning on it. But legit, 6:00, Marvel's movie, and I'm standing in an empty theater, which I can't remember the last time that happened.
Yeah. Opening weekend, Friday. Like that's kind of crazy. But I mean, that is a testament to why the film didn't make that much money over the weekend. I mean, the movie pulled in $47 million domestically.
Yeah.
That's crazy. To put that in perspective.
Do we know what it did worldwide?
Yes, $110.3 million. So
that's got to be like a $300 million budget, right?
Yeah, at least
with marketing,
with reshoots,
with marketing all in, they're like 400 plus.
400 plus.
Yeah, so they need to make like around $500 million to break even, roughly, to break even. And like, if your opening weekend is 110 globally, that's not what they wanted to happen. I mean, The Flash, which became the biggest comic book movie flop of all time, right? Opened at $55 million, and this did $8 million less than what is now the worst comic book movie box office wise ever.
I liked it better than The Flash. Their marketing was just terrible for this movie.
You like the Marvels better than The Flash too?
No.
Oh, okay.
I was like, that's what I thought I heard, but I was just double checking. I mean, to give like a little bit of perspective on what $47 million opening weekend means for this film.
Unbelievable.
Five Nights at Freddy's.
Yeah.
Okay. Opened the previous weekend to $80 million on a significantly smaller budget.
It's probably like,
I think it was like 100 mil or
easily.
something. It was something tiny.
Yeah. Very small budget film. This is Blumhouse Studios. They're known for small budget films. And there was no big names in the film or whatever.
Yeah.
$80 million it opened to. Then you have the Marvels. They made, for their $300+ million production budget, they were able to produce in the end a 90-minute long movie with lackluster visual effects. That, my friends, is a problem. Yeah. And it is a very good, whether you liked the story of this movie or not, it is a good microscopic look at what has been going on with the MCU at large and why so many people have checked out. You cannot tell me that you are spending $300 million on this film and you come out with a 90-minute movie where the villain is non-existent? No.
What do you mean?
That's a problem.
Darben had Ronan's hammer. We talking about?
Isn't this like the last thing that Marvel needed? Was this type of
without
release?
question.
Yeah, it's
Without
Especially after Thor: Love and Thunder.
oh my god, the worst Marvel film. It's my least favorite. Thor: Love and Thunder is my least favorite Marvel film, Marvel Studios film of all time. It's weird. Like, I do want to say, admittedly though, like, I'm not the audience for this in the sense that I'm not the biggest Captain Marvel and Miss Marvel fan. I do enjoy Monica Rambeau. I think she was the highlight of this film. And I do like that character. I liked her in WandaVision. I'm a fan of Photon. I'm just not the biggest fan of Captain Marvel and Miss Marvel in comics, and neither am I on the big screen. So admittedly, like, I don't think this movie was ever going to blow me away just because I'm not a big fan of the characters in general. But with that said, I mean, even looking at it as, forget like the heroes. I've seen, you know, a lot of just movie reviewers and even just my 2 cents of like the film. The editing was a little off. The story was kind of all over the place. So much expositional dialogue where they had that 10-minute scene on the spaceship where they're literally just reading a dictionary of what's happening. Like, I will give the chemistry between the 3 girls. I know that, you know, it's cool. Like,
was not bad.
Yeah, this is not for me. I cannot speak for anyone else. I don't think this is the worst Marvel movie.
No.
But I will say it's definitely
because Thor: Love and Thunder still exists.
It's definitely not top tier. I just didn't enjoy it that much. I'm just to say that I just didn't enjoy it that much.
Yeah, I kind of wanted to go into this like as far as a perspective because I really had to. After seeing it, I had a very strong opinion about it. But I spent a couple of days going, okay, let me be objective.
You didn't like the singing scene?
Okay. Going to get me right back to where I started.
You didn't like the Disney princess
I'm like, okay,
scene?
let me be objective because there are a lot of people, many of which are in our audience, that genuinely liked this movie. They thought it was fun. It was just a fun ride, quick fun ride. That's literally how they're describing it. Like it was quick paced. It was just a fun 90 minutes or whatever at the movie theater. I was down with it. I had more fun than I thought I would at the end. And that's cool. Like whatever. I recognize that like this is just not. Some of this is not my cup of tea as far as the style and the storytelling. Having said that, you know, so to be objective, I'll start with positive things. Like you said, the chemistry between the 3 characters, which we thought it was Photon. She's not Photon. She actually doesn't even have a name. Monica Rambeau. Well, she has a name. She doesn't have a superhero name.
Didn't they call her Photon?
No, never. They
on
never
IMDb, they call her
landed
Photon, no?
Whatever. Monica Rambeau. So Monica Rambeau, Captain Marvel, and Miss Marvel. They had a decent chemistry on screen. I thought Miss Marvel she seemed like she was just having a blast just being there, which was cute. You know, I know she's not your favorite, but she's cute. She's like a cute kid, a little bit like Spider-Man's, like Peter Parker Spider-Man. A lot of those vibes in there. Yeah. But is that enough to carry the movie? No, not for me. It had a couple of really cool action sequences. I thought the very first action sequence where they were swapping their powers or were swapping places and they were, fighting the Kree in different places at the same time. I thought that was pretty well paced and it was kind of a fun action scene. So it had its moments in the film, but then you had these huge glaring moments that for me was just like, what were you thinking? That for me personally, and I get some people may think, oh, that's great. It's like, the planet Aladna, where they go there and they say, and I get that this is from Captain Marvel comics, by the way. And there's a lot of people saying like, oh, this is all ripped right from the comics. And that is true. A lot of the stuff is actually ripped from Captain Marvel comics. So to be fair, they were inserting things that were already in the comics. The thing is that you're inserting things into a movie that's from comics that were not super successful to begin with. And so it's like, you can do that. That's your prerogative. As a studio, if you want to do that, do that. But then don't act shocked when the story that didn't succeed in comics doesn't succeed in the theaters.
Well, it's one of those things. It's like just because you're adapting it from the comics doesn't mean it's good because not all comics are good. So it's like, ta-da!
Didn't it kind of feel like this was, I mean, there was a few times I'm watching this and I felt like, I mean, I know you have Ms. Marvel, you have to watch it on Disney Plus, and this is kind of like a sequel to that. And obviously Captain Marvel, this was a direct sequel to that. You have WandaVision, you know, Monica Rambeau, you know, it leads to this. I felt like I was watching a sequel to a movie that hadn't exist, come out yet. Like you know what I mean? Like I feel like
that's a good point.
There's something in between these that I'm missing.
That's a good point.
Sure.
You know, I think that flow wasn't there for me.
And that scene that you mentioned where they're on the ship and there's all this expositional dialogue, there was a lot of that. This movie, that was one of my issues from a storytelling perspective that bothered me, is it felt like a Frankenstein monster a little bit, because you could tell this is a movie that they were going back to the drawing board over and over and over again. You know, you can't cut a movie down because apparently the original cut was over 2 hours long. So it was like 2 hours and 12 minutes or 2 hours and 20 minutes. So they cut it all the way down to about 88 to 90 minutes long, the actual film itself. Well, you can't take that much out plus do reshoots, because you got to think about how many times this movie got delayed and pushed back as they were trying to figure out, like, what do we do with this thing clearly? And you had a lot of people, apparently, even from inside Marvel, that had kind of given up on it. So it felt like that at points. Like if you're being objectively honest about the story and the lack of character development, the lack of the villain is the prime example of that.
You know what pissed me off about the villain in the sense, not even so much the villain. It's the
Darben.
It's the struggle that Captain Marvel had with the villain. This is the same Captain Marvel that in Endgame almost solo Thanos.
Mm-hmm.
Thanos with
they even bring that up
with the Infinity Gauntlet, with the freaking Infinity Gauntlet. She almost single-handedly took him down, right? And then she's having a hard time with Ronin's hammer,
right?
Essentially.
Or how about the scene where they're on Aladna, right? And they're fighting, Darben's forces come in and they're battling everybody, the forces of Aladna, along with, you've got Captain Marvel, Miss Marvel, and Monica Rambeau, plus the forces of Aladna, and they're having a hard time with Darben's forces, right? And they wind up taking off in a ship. When we watched in Endgame, Captain Marvel blasted, just straight flew through a bunch of Thanos' ships, obliterating them.
Yeah, sounds like it's
arrived. Like, why would you run away and literally warp jump, or whatever they call it in these movies? Why would you do that when Captain Marvel by herself could just at borderline light speed just blast through all these ships and destroy them? It doesn't even make sense, like from their own storytelling.
I was just being so petty in the theater. I think I said to you, I was like, Superman could have did that.
Well, it made her so overpowered from the get-go. So I think that's partially why so many people dislike her character narrative, which I thought they cleaned up a bit in this movie. I mean, they gave her some challenges. I wish they would have gone a little bit deeper in there.
I honestly think a big problem of Captain Marvel from the books and even the film is that none of it felt earned, right? Like, I think that's why characters, because it's not, a lot of people try to be like, it's like, oh, she's a female character, you don't, that's why you don't like her. It's like, no. My favorite DCEU EU movie is Wonder Woman. I absolutely love that film. It's my favorite one for the DC's put out in their extended universe. I even liked Black Widow. I know you're not that big of a fan of Black Widow, and so
it wasn't bad.
Oh, okay, but I really dug the Black Widow movie, right? So it's just, but these characters like Scarlett Johansson, Black Widow, Gal Gadot, Wonder Woman, Gamora, Nebula, they all earned it, and it felt good. It's just good character building. And I don't feel like they did that with Captain Marvel. Like, again, like some of the coolest characters in the MCU are female characters. Again, Nebula, Gamora, amazing arcs, amazing characters. Scarlett Johansson, Black Widow, so good. But just Captain Marvel it's not jabbing with me. And I know some people love it, and that's awesome. I wish I loved it. I just personally don't.
And a lot of this, I think, you could have done a lot more with this film. And they started hinting at some of it, like, for instance, Miss Marvel's relationship to Captain Marvel, how she was this huge fangirl, right? And then she goes and she's actually with Captain Marvel, and she starts to actually see what it means to be a hero and some of the very difficult things that a hero has to do and decide. Kind of like the thing I was talking about before, where they kind of stick their toe in the water for a brief second. They're on that Skrull colony. and they have to leave a bunch of Skrulls behind and to die. And she says, she looks at Miss Marvel, and Miss Marvel's freaking out. She's like, we got to save the people. We got to save them. And she's like, we have to save the ones we can. And it goes to that other thing with Loki where it's like, how do you decide who lives and who dies? Right? And they kind of dipped their toe in there. Well, you could have used something like that to springboard to do much more character development for both of those characters within this film.
Yeah.
And they just left it from there. And you see Miss Marvel kind of like, learn some things, but it was very on the fly and it was very wrapped around like just very quick paced things that you really don't care about a ton because they're just kind of there.
Yeah.
It's just like plot devices to get us from one scene to the next. They reduced Nick Fury to just a series, and don't even listen. That's a whole other conversation by itself, by the way, because what the MCU has done to Nick Fury is in the vein for me of Thor and Hulk. Because it's not just this, it's Secret Invasion. It's all of his appearances.
Secret Invasion is one of the most loved things the MCU has done to him.
It is tragic what they did with Nick Fury. He's a very cool character that Sam Jackson played very well. But, they could have explored these things further and make it more compelling. And they just didn't in the end. And it felt like a movie that was just like, hey, let's just get this out. Let's make it as fun as we can with what we've got. We can't spend more than $310 million. We just can't, guys. Sorry. And then let's just move on, because the movie ends with a couple of end scenes / mid-credit scenes, one of which is teasing the coming young Avengers, right? Miss Marvel is trying to form the Young Avengers. She approaches Kate Bishop,
pretending to be Nick Fury.
Yeah. And then, of course, the one that they were trying to get people to come to theater to see, which is the appearance of Beast, the 20th Century Fox Beast, Kelsey Grammer voiced Beast, and also Binary, who's not a mutant in the comics. Am I missing something on that, Tom?
I mean, no, she just turns into Binary in an X-Men comic.
Right, but she's not considered a mutant.
No, not that I know of.
Okay. Now, to be fair, we don't know that in this alternate world that Monica Rambeau ends up in, where it's her mom, Maria Rambeau,
an alternate version. She doesn't have to be a mutant or an X-Men to be with the X-Men, as, lots of characters.
But they reference Charles, and so there's here's the X-Men guys.
She's clearly working with them in some capacity.
Could you imagine if that had happened 2 years ago? I think people would want to see this movie.
Their mind.
They would have loved the movie just because of the post-credit scenes.
Correct.
I think that ramp up is just non-existent right now.
Correct.
They literally just gave us another X-Men on screen, and people are like, okay.
They did the same thing with Multiverse of Madness, where it was like, hey, people are starting to look at this little sideways. Let's show them that the Illuminati's in the movie. Remember, we were talking about that at the time. It's like, why would you spoil that? Why would you not surprise the audience with that the way that you've done in the past? That was really shocking.
They're pulling a Black Adam in and be like, hey, Superman's in it. Superman's in it. Come see it. Superman's in it.
For real.
I mean, I was right there up there. I spoiled it for myself because I'm in the boat where I never would have done that several years ago, but I'm like, I just gotta know because I'm not as invested. So what is it? I'm like, oh, Beast, cool. It's like, because we knew the X-Men were coming. We knew they were coming. They were ready. They've officially announced it. We've seen them in the Multiverse of Madness. Hugh Jackman is in Deadpool 3. So the X-Men are everywhere at this point. So yeah, it was cool seeing Beast.
But with no pathway in sight for us to actually get the X-Men, which is problem number one.
So it was cool seeing Beast, and he's the best he's ever looked, I thought. Certainly the most comic book accurate. He looks like he was ripped right out of X-Men, the 90s animated series, which I loved, wearing the lab coat, glasses, and everything. So he looked awesome, and it's really cool. And then you got Kelsey Grammer, who's the original Beast, voicing him again because he's mocap in this. But it's cool. He looks awesome. I love the X-Men. But is it gonna be good? Is it gonna be good? Are you gonna nail it? Where are you going with it? You're just showing us a lot of X-Men, but where's the X-Men movie? I don't
I agree with you. It's not even on the schedule.
They know we want the X-Men, hence them using it as stingers to tease us and bring it out. But they're
bait,
not giving us the X-Men.
And we don't even know, just like they did with Mr. Fantastic in the Multiverse of Madness. We have no idea if this is actually going to be our X-Men.
For sure.
Or if this is just a tease. Just like same thing. They did same thing with Quicksilver in the WandaVision series. Same thing. It was just bait and switch stuff. And that's one of the things, honestly, that I think has really aided there's a lot of them, but there was one of the things that has really aided towards people going like, all right, I'm all set. No, thanks.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, but I think they're going the way DC went, where they don't really have a path at this point. Like, because they were banking, so that's the thing with the Marvel Studios is they were so successful for a decade. They could release anything and people would go in droves to the theaters. Because most people didn't know who Ant-Man was,
right?
But people were going to see it. They're like, oh, it's Paul Rudd and he's playing some superhero I've never heard of, but I'm going to go see it because it's the MCU and it's Paul Rudd. They did that with a lot of characters, right? People like Iron Man was not an A-list character until freaking Robert Downey Jr. nailed it. And then, the success of that led to all these other movies and stuff like that. And it's just they were so successful for so long. This is the point here. They were so successful for so long, they thought they could do anything and people would show up. So they're like, oh, okay, well, we're just going to do things that we want to do. And then they gave us a lot of stuff on Disney Plus that just wasn't sticking. And they're like, oh, no, they're going to watch it. It's going to be fine. They're going to watch it. So they did more. And then we were in the second year of Phase 4. And then, Phase 4 ended. Like, but we got Phase 5, like Multiverse of Madness. They're going to watch it. And then they did all, they kept throwing stuff.
Yeah.
And eventually they're like, oh, they're just not going to show up for anything we do anymore. And now they're in panic mode. Like, but you know what they will show up for? X-Men. So they're like, X-Men. But at the same time, even though you're giving us cameos of X-Men, you're not giving us the X-Men movie. And how long have they been teasing the Fantastic Four movie? Another one they know people will show up for.
That's at least on the schedule.
It's at least on the schedule, but it's like they know the ones that will most likely bring in butts to seats is Fantastic Four and X-Men. But we're just getting little cameos. Just do an X-Men movie already. Just freaking do the movie. you know you're teasing it. You know we want it. Just give it to us. Make your money.
Arris has MCU fatigue. He's just tired. He's just a tired man at this point.
I just think I don't know. The fact that there's something to be said that they were so successful for so long that, Jeff said it when he was here, that they weren't listening to a lot of fans. They were just doing what they wanted to do. And now they're feeling the ramifications of that. They're like, dang it. Now we have to pull back and we got to think of what we give them because they're just not going to show up for anything we give them.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah. Uh-huh. Hey, welcome to business consumer.
Yeah. In short, like I know that there's people who enjoyed this movie. I'm glad for that. Unfortunately, the numbers don't lie. Either way, to me, this movie, while it had some moments that were okay, it just reeked of a studio that is in a lot of flux, really isn't sure about its footing at the current, and is going to be making some serious changes going forward, which leads us to the part about the schedule change and announcing shortly after the launch, they moved everything out of 2024 except for Deadpool, which they shifted to July, and everything else is coming now in 2025 and beyond, including what Tom already referenced, the Captain America 4, the New World Order film. The rumors around that are not good either. Just a massive reshoots. They did test screenings. It was not well received. And now they're saying they're doing, apparently it's 3 specific massive segments of the film that are being completely rewritten and reshot. That's going to be tough because that'll be the next major MCU film after Deadpool. And Deadpool now was going to officially be in the MCU. And that looks like it might shake things up quite a bit.
Yeah, Deadpool got pushed a little bit. And my theory is because... God, I hope this is true. I hope this is true. Can you imagine of Ryan Reynolds being Ryan Reynolds, doing what he does, making fun of himself as Green Lantern, making fun of Marvel and all these real world events, because Deadpool can do that, because Deadpool breaks the fourth wall, and he has done that in his films, that Deadpool, like the movie starts off, and it's basically Deadpool saying, time to save this sinking ship.
That's my hope as well. Yes.
Because that would rally all the fans. It'd be like, yes, if you could be self-deprecating, if you could be self-aware
100%.
And let Ryan Reynolds play with that, you will win me back.
Yep. I couldn't agree more. And that's actually, I don't know what you think, Tom, but that's actually what I'm hoping for. I'm hoping they went, okay, we're going to use Deadpool to reset this whole beast.
If they let Ryan Reynolds go off on his real world rants like he does,
makes fun of the mouse.
Makes fun of the mouse. He makes fun of, how he made fun of himself, the Deadpool that we got in the Wolverine movie, made fun of him as Green Lantern. If they let him go that route and like even make fun of box office numbers, be like, this is probably going to do way better than, stuff like that. Oh my, yes. Cause that would be so endearing. We would rather be like, okay, all right, Marvel. All right. Okay. I see you.
What do you think, Tom?
No, absolutely. I mean, there's still like half the movie needs to be filmed and they're not done yet. So, it would make sense that they would source some material, with the current environment that the MCU's in.
Yeah, because we already know the leaked images before the strikes happened. They were filming with what looks to be broken 20th Century Fox logo where Wolverine and Deadpool are fighting in front of. So there's definitely some multiverse stuff happening there. It's just a matter of like, how is this going to set up going into Secret Wars or whatever they have that comes next? Because now things are in flux. So we don't necessarily know definitively what's after Deadpool 3 because they're shifting gears on everything right now. So, but again, if Marvel, if Deadpool, like I said with The Flash, remember I said The Flash is DC scapegoat? It's Flashpoint. You reset it.
Oh, yeah.
You can do anything. Deadpool is the MCU's Flashpoint. You could fix and address everything with Deadpool, both on a like real world scale and in universe scale. And it would be so in line and so perfect. God, I hope that happens.
For me, if I'm writing this, I'm saying we use this to do in a hilarious way where we wipe out the 20th Century Fox characters, the 20th Century Fox X-Men specifically, and we introduce at the end of the film, we intro the brand new X-Men team. And that is because everything that would transpire throughout that entire movie, like you were just talking about, it would be fun. It would be self-deprecating. It would be lighthearted. It would clean up all of the loose garbage, and you would introduce something that's everybody's looking for and waiting for. So I think that they definitely have a shot with this movie, and I'm wondering if maybe that's their thinking of let's keep that in 2024. That will be our anchor and our setup for everything that comes after. And if that's the case, and this is why I was saying to you earlier, I think that this schedule shift, yes, the strike and everything like that had huge ramifications for the entire industry. That is a fact. And that is we're going to see that play out for the next few years, I think. But so you've got that. But if part of their thinking, I'm hoping, is that we have to change everything we've announced, or at least most of it. So let's create some space between now and when the next big stuff starts to drop, and let's clean everything up, restructure it all. My guess is that they do move away from Kang and they move more towards like a Doom, but they could stick with Kang, but I think that's going to be a harder thing to do. But they definitely have a shot. So, which leads me to my closing question for both of you. On a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being the most likely, what is the MCU's chances of that they are able to rebound, recover, and come back strong after this? Tom, let's start with you.
I would put that at a solid, man, it is tough because even today we're seeing that there are, rumors of scrapping Kang altogether, right? Which is essentially restarting the plan as they had it, and going from Thanos to where we are now and knowing that they're gonna have to mulligan. Yeah. It'd have to go even more grandiose, They have to go Galactus. They'd have to go, Dr. Doom, going cosmic like that. It's a flip of a coin to me. It could be a 5. I probably put out a 5 as far as the
50,
rebound.
50.
Because they could just like double down on what they've been doing and then just kind of like fizzle out until they have to do what DC did and just do a hard reset, which also are rumors going around. And I don't necessarily think that's a bad idea. I think all of these IPs could use a reset. I'm also in the same boat. I'm not a huge Star Wars fan, but I wouldn't mind seeing a full reset of that too.
We were actually just talking about that earlier.
I just brought that up to Tim earlier. Yeah, that one, the Star Wars side, that one, I don't know. For me personally.
Don't you want to see like Luke again, possibly? Like just a new take on characters you love?
But the problem is, and this is what I was ranting about
Star
earlier
Wars
today.
Star Wars is such a different beast, though.
It is in the way that they've structured it, but also like that was what made me so upset, not to go off on a Star Wars rant. That's what made me so upset about The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi, what they did with Han Solo and Luke Skywalker specifically. Unfortunately, Leia, they kind of had her in a strong position, and unfortunately, Carrie Fisher passed away. But with Han Solo and with Luke Skywalker, as far as the Harrison Ford and Mark Hamill versions of those, particularly with Han Solo, that you had one shot. You had one shot to get that right. And they just totally choked. And the same, and more so with Luke Skywalker. So you can still do it, but it would be face replacement. You're not completing Luke Skywalker's arc in a different way because you would be totally disconnected. Harrison Ford's not coming back to do anything more with Han Solo. So you would have to recast that, which they're not going to do. And Carrie Fisher unfortunately passed away. So you're never going to have a situation again where those three people can reprise those roles to conclude their arc. You missed that opportunity. So that, as a Star Wars fan, is very frustrating. But that's a separate.
Yeah, I mean, for me, going on a little tangent on that, it's just Lucas built Star Wars so specifically. That was his baby, where Star Wars, I feel like, is a universe where you add on to. You just keep adding and adding. Like the original trilogy is always the basis. Then you do the prequel trilogy. Then you go do Clone Wars. Then you go do Rebels. Then you go do the expanded universe and comics and novels. And then you do the video games. And it all links to that. And it's such a formula that Disney is still using to this day with all the Disney Plus stuff that technically, yeah, it's fiction. You can do whatever the hell you want. Disney owns it. Their IP, they can do whatever they want. But I think it would be unwise because I don't know. Maybe if...
Well, can I throw something in there?
Yeah.
Think about all the lore that people love from the High Republic.
Yeah.
All this lore from way back when that they're like, oh, these are just legends, but they're not actually going to like
you mean the Old Republic?
Canon. Or the Old Republic, excuse me. Yeah, the Old Republic.
Yeah, I was going to say, what lore from the High Republic? Yeah,
just like old lore that people loved that wasn't necessarily Lucas canon that worked. That if we were to go back to that, and I'm sure there would be a lot of people that would be excited to see Darth Revan, for example.
Oh, no, for sure. But that
would be adding on
to. That would be adding on to, though, yeah.
For a long time, a lot of people viewed that as canon until Disney got their hands on Lucasfilm.
Yeah.
Because that's the way people just viewed it. And George kind of just let that go. He just was like, and some of it he even adopted. He kind of celebrated along with fans, and then but
well, no, it was still under his eye. He had to allow that to happen.
Yeah, he had to allow it, and he kind of was like, yeah. But once Disney got a hold of it, they're the ones that divided things into legends and canon. So if they did bring any of that in for long-term Star Wars fans, that would just be reincorporating things that already they kind of still view as canon anyway. It's just Disney did their little divisions of things because they wanted to introduce things like the High Republic later on down the line and their new storylines. So it'd still be adding on.
I just think if you were going to reboot the original trilogy, it would have to be an Elseworlds thing where you still kind of continue the core because, And
now that Filoni's introduced that alternate galaxy, you could do a lot of things.
You could. Like that, rebooting a different version of it for sure. But
I just don't know that Star Wars could be a multiversal type where there's alternate versions of.
It's kind of built differently.
Yeah.
But anyway,
so Tom says a 5, 50-50 on the MCU.
That's my answer. That's my answer. That's exactly what I was going to, because it's like, you got to give Marvel the benefit of the doubt because they did have like 10 solid years. So they're definitely capable as they, undoubtedly are what kept comic books kept the genre, like revitalize it for a decade. Like that is, you cannot ever, no matter what you say of them now currently, you cannot take away that Marvel single-handedly spearheaded bringing the genre of comic books to the forefront.
Yes.
Without the MCU, like the DCU came up to compete, the games, the comics, everything rose with the MCU. So because of that,
Rising tide lifts all ships.
Yep. I will give them a 5 because I think on the current trajectory, but like benefit of the doubt, you had 10 solid years. So if you get things right and you do stuff that we want, you can fix it.
I am actually going to be the pessimist of this group. I'm going to give it a 3. And the reason I say that is because of the way that fans function. When you lose them at this level, it is very hard to get people back without a full something brand new starting. The first thing has to die, time has to pass, and something new needs to come along.
James Gunn knows this.
And is that to say they can't tell some, good stories in one-off films? No, that's not what I'm talking about. I think Deadpool 3 is going to be a blast, right? I think that they can make some individual films, but I think that the successes will come more in line with what Tom said at the very beginning. That will not be part of a bigger universe that all connects. It'll be one-off films. But this through line, this giant universe that all connects, I think they killed it. I think I think the likelihood is that they have killed that and trying to recuperate it now. I think there's a much greater chance that DC takes that footprint because it'll feel fresh and new and fun and totally different characters and all that kind of stuff. And Marvel will be stuck trying to revitalize for a while until they finally just, from a money standpoint, they can't do it anymore. And it becomes like one-off films with specific characters like the Fantastic Four. And everybody is just given up on that big universe, connected universe thing.
I mean, that's possible. I feel it's definitely possible.
I hope they prove me wrong.
But fans are also very hungry, and they could forget, especially if Deadpool 3 hits and it's really good, and then you have nothing else for that year, you'll be hungry. Fans will be hungry again. They'll be like, oh, but Deadpool 3 was really good. It's setting up this. I do want to see it. So, I mean, it really can go anyway. There's no real right answer. We can't really predict this.
I really do hope they prove me wrong.
Yeah.
I really do. Because again, like you said, rising tide lifts all ships. If the MCU is cranking and DCU is cranking, dude, the entire industry is going to be thriving and doing well. But the one thing is for dang sure is they have to figure out how to make a good movie without spending $300 million to do it.
It's true.
They've got to figure that out because these budgets are not sustainable. They're just not. And that's my thought on that.
Hey, Tom, let's co-direct the movie. We only need $100 million. Let's do it.
We can do it cheaper than
$100
that.
million? He's starting at $100 million.
Hey, it's not $300 million.
They made The Creator for $80 million.
I still haven't seen this
80
movie.
million.
I need to see it. Everyone's talking about it.
But I think that wraps us up.
that
Tom,
does wrap us up.
this has been a blast, man. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks so much, guys. I appreciate it. Look forward to covering more comic books and movie talk in the future.
And tell everybody where they can find you.
You can find me at ComicTom101 on all social media platforms.
Including YouTube.
As I like to say, ComicTom 101. Just like that. Where you get the comic hits. Your daily dose of comic vibes.
The top 10 countdown.
Join me on ComicTom 101, top of the hour, where you get the hot five.
And watch out for next month.
Exclusive here for you guys.
That's right. The hot 5 every month. So watch out for the next one at the beginning of December. We're kicking another 5 towards you guys.
Yes. But Tom, thank you for coming on. And as we always say, we'll see you guys next time when we talk about all things comics.